Good afternoon and welcome to Martini's Eco and Country Bites. This afternoon we have a great chat coming up. I think it's going to get pretty spicy myself. Excuse me with my rock chick hair. I've been running around like a crazy woman all morning. Today we have the one and only Wade Northhausen from Billboard Battalion, who's coming on board to have a great chat about everything to do with the swindle, the global agenda, and everything else in between, including getting rid of our sheep from exportation. Welcome, Wade. Great to finally chat, my friend.
Beautiful, Martine. It's really, really good to catch up, mate. The last time that we caught up with you was when we're over in Western Australia, I think around about April last year. I said that you were doing some really, really great work over there. We met a whole heap of terrific people who are on the side of fighting against the wind turbines and so on, such as yourself. It's really, really good to be here and good to have a chat and see what we can bring together from the west coast of Australia and similarly the east coast of Australia.
Absolutely. We're united in all this, aren't we? Because none of this is separated. It's all part of one overarching bit of an agenda. So I know that just on point, I got a phone call from a community this morning reaching out because their community is being steamrolled by this agenda itself, putting in wind turbines in a zone that's completely inappropriate. And again, this is not fit for use and not wanted by the people. Let's kick off. Let's have a chat about how both of us have been on this journey together, separately, of course. You on the East Coast and me on the West Coast, on our soapbox for some time, trying to educate people and bring awareness to the fact that there has been a lot of time, energy, and decades in the planning of an overarching plan, let's just say, not just for Australia, but it's certainly affecting us now. It's hitting us hard. What would you like to kick off with there, Wade? I know that we've had some really interesting chats, but to hear more and more communities crying out right now, I'm glad they're standing up and speaking up.
Yeah, no, thanks, Martine. I think that, you mentioned the time frame that, a lot of people, including us, have been fighting against this and how long this has been in the planning stages for. So, for people who might be new to this or people who know their history or what have you, what we're dealing with now has been something that's been put together over a long, long, long time. My personal involvement in this has been around about 40 years. About the mid-'80s, I got involved in it because we were farming at Tongala, dairy farming there. And a lot of things were starting to happen with banks in particular, with foreclosing, illegal foreclosures and sending people bankrupt and broke to try and start getting hold of properties. So, that's where my parents and myself got involved in it. And once you start to look at everything that's happening and you get involved in that, you go, hang on, something here is very, very wrong. And as you go along, you start to learn more and more and you listen to more and more people who have the right information. So where we are now, we're a long way down the track and getting to the pointy end of the stick. And this is why, so many people are speaking up now because, some very serious things are happening and we are running out of time.
People are getting hit hard finally, and I hate to say finally because the soft approach when we were out there, many people out there trying to wake people up and saying, stop complying to this top-down pressure that's going on. The government works for us. And it's been completely asked about for a long time. We need to flip this pretty soon. And I'm glad to see farmers waking up, standing up and getting out there on their own soapboxes and just saying, oh, we're fed up with it. You brought up the dairy industry. That's the one thing that I saw. I come from a very small community here in Western Australia, and I've talked about this before, how I saw once the Tier 3 railway system stopped going through my town, that there was a massive decline. Of course, that is all part of that, the disconnection of communities. So the dairy industry used to be so strong. There used to be in like smaller dairies that work together more cooperatively. And that's where this was, again, it's breaking down community, right, Wade?
So the dairy industry, and it's interesting to learn, as a young bloke over here in the Goulburn Valley in north central Victoria, it's interesting to learn about the different dairy regions in WA or in Queensland, and there's a lot of similarities that those regions and communities enjoyed here around the Tongala Goulburn Valley area. Around this region right here, this was known as the Golden Mile. There was a huge number of dairy farms and massive wealth, jobs, business, commerce, trade. Everything was just couldn't have been better. But we've seen the destruction of that, and we've seen the destruction of that through government policies. It's as simple as that. And these government policies are being done at the instruction of what I call the global big picture, one world government stuff. The one world government, that's their wording, not mine. And what we've seen here, and we'll probably talk about the water a bit later, but the government policies that have taken away all the irrigation water that we used to have here. Now there's only a very small portion left, which has wreaked absolute havoc through the dairy industry in this region here.
Wow. Yeah, look, and see, this is where slightly different issues that are being experienced by different area by having these conversations is getting us to see a broader picture of why across the board it's happening, but how there's slightly different agendas to put into place to stop things, I come from an area that is also, I've been living down in the southwest of WA. That is our dairy area down there predominantly. And the same, I have many friends that used to be dairy farmers, and they all threw in the towel a good decade or so ago because they just said that they couldn't be competitive anymore. It was too hard. There was too many hurdles to jump over, too many boxes to tick. It's the same as like a lot of industries, I think, like a lot of agricultural industries, like the potato industry that, when boards come on board and they start taking over, this is the thing. It's like this total governance from all of these different authorities and stuff that have always concerned me. Whereas in my younger years, and I'm sure it's the same for you, mate, there was a lot of cooperation between farmers and going back to cooperative farming and where each person used to help each other out. That's sort of out the window a little bit these days, and it's all more looking at it from a very corporate point of view. So, looking at that, you mentioned about the banks and stuff. So that's where, you talk about the great deception here and how the banks have come in and overstepped the mark and have been given, legislation to do so. They've been given the green flag.
Well, like the banks now, if you look at who owns the banks now or who have big shareholdings in the banks, they're all part of the companies that have the biggest shareholdings. They're all part of the World Economic Forum.
BlackRock, Vanguard.
yes. And look, a big problem is, of course, that the vast majority of Australians, whether you're someone in business, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a tradie, whether you work a job, under some sort of a trade union, most people have never heard of the World Economic Forum and would have no idea what they're about. So therefore, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and the World Health Organization all operate together under the heading of the new One World Government. And a big part of their platform is to take down Australian or actually global food production. So, and when people start to look at all the different things that are happening across Australia and across the world for that matter, the attacks that are happening on our farmers, our industries, our businesses, and the people, this is all a coordinated effort. And this is something that, we can expand on today. That I think is very important because, we, Billboard Battalion, we travel, over quite a lot of Australia. and talk to people and educate people about things. And everybody has what appears to be their own small issue. Well, not small issue, but their own
No,
issue that
issue that's isolated, right? They think that they're the only one that's experiencing it.
And the most important thing for everybody to understand is that whether you're talking about the collapse of the dairy industry here in Victoria, the collapse of the rice industry in Southern Riverina, New South Wales, whether you're talking about things falling apart in Queensland, you're talking about banning of the sheep in Western Australia. And we were across in Western Australia, only, as I said, back in April, and talked to a lot of cockies over there. And, you know, and we'll talk about the destabilisation of government policy. But, you know, all these things people need to understand. And one of the big ones, of course, is the big hoax about climate change and all the so-called renewable energy that's being put up to so-called cope with climate change or to assist it. All these things are not single issue items. They're all connected. And every one of them has the effect, Martine, of destroying more parts of our community, more parts of our industry and business and farming. And all these things come together. So this is one of our primary objectives, is to get people in industry or the general population to understand this is not an accident. What's happening is being very carefully put together, very carefully orchestrated, and it is about destroying our country. And more people, thankfully, are starting to see this.
The one thing that's annoyed me for some time now is people saying, oh, that's just some conspiracy. It's like when you can find documents that prove how this was planned and outlined, that this was planned 50 plus years ago, and that strategically, decade by decade, they have been chipping away at Australia. We're just going to put it in the context of Australia. It's happening worldwide, but in Australia, about how they have weakened communities and they've weakened the agricultural industry. This is what makes me angry. It's where they've taken rights away from farmers and producers. Primary industry and food security is number one. We have the most resources for being completely self-sufficient here as a nation than anyone else on the planet. And look at the way that we have lost all of our manufacturing. We are now exporting more than we actually use ourselves. We're importing stuff from that is secondary to the produce that we make in Australia. It's absolutely absurd, Wade. Absurd. And then the one thing they are cancelling is getting rid of the sheep exportation, which has been overhauled to such a degree where you know that there is nothing to do with the welfare of those animals. If you want to consume meat, then that is what the process is. But if you're talking about exportation and not looking after them, I know many people that used to work on them, they said that it's a vastly different game now. So that is just part of the agenda, and people have taken a long time to wake up to that, really have. It's taken them a good year or so.
Well, I think that the banning, and look, they talk about the Labor Party, that's Labor policy, and the coalition reverse it. Yeah. The bottom line is, look, they're all on the same page. The four major parties in Australia are all on the same page.
Two wings of the same bird.
What's that? Sorry, Martine?
Two wings of the same bird, my friend. We talk about that all the time, right?
And and so, like when I was over in WA over there, you know, they were talking about, let's just say, one particular politician in around the Perth area, a Liberal bloke. You know, and they're saying, oh, yes, it's Labor's policy and all this sort of stuff. No, it isn't, mate. It's the four major parties, and they're all in on the same page. They're all supporting the Agenda 21. They're all supporting the Agenda 2030. They're all supporting the likes of the Lima Declaration and so on. So, you know, the Australian people need to understand very, very quickly that the major parties, it doesn't matter which one you put in, you know, they're every bit as bad as each other, and that's not the answer. The answer is for we the people to actually get back involved in politics and understand what they're doing and take a part in it, because, you know, if you look at Western Australia, which is where most of your audience would be, I'd suggest.
No,
you know,
we're 11 Australia.
Yeah. Well, all around the world, actually, Martine, to tell you the truth. So yeah, we'll just do that. But yeah, I know there's a lot of sheep farmers in WA who are very, very concerned about the things happening now with regard to live sheep exports. I know that there's a number of the sheep farmers who are already pulling out of sheep because of this. So when you get a lot of these filthy scumbag politicians who say, oh, well, you know, we'll put in a bit of a package. I think it's around 50 mil or something like that. We'll put in $50 million and, you know, we can fix up give people something else to do. The effects that destabilisation of that industry, and this is what government's specialty is, destabilising confidence in an industry. That's what they specialise in. That is their plans and objectives. That's the results they get. So when you start to see people who no longer have confidence, then they're doing a runner. They're out the gate, and you know, this is where, if let's just say the likes of the Libs in WA were actually serious about reversing this keep the sheep ban policy, they would be coming out and saying, right, this has got nothing to do with Labor policy. It's everything to do with the world agenda, and they should be telling people those very words, because that's what needs to be said, so that the Australian people can understand what's happening and then do something about it. And if you've got the likes of Rick Wilson across there who's saying, oh, it's the Labor policy. No, Rick, actually, mate. And I've seen, you know, plenty of stuff where Rick's, you know, buying in on the banning of the live sheep export from WA. You need to actually be honest and tell people what is really happening, what's really going on, because that's the only place that we're going to start from and fix this. And, you know, we've heard Dutton and all that sort of thing say, oh, well, you know, if we get into power next election, which could be maybe March, April, something this year, maybe May, I'm not sure, that they'll reverse it. Well, I've heard these scumbags in the coalition say all this stuff before, and when they get into power, all they do is come up with BS excuses as to why they can't. So
they made promises they couldn't follow through with. We hear it all the time. You were talking about attack on agriculture. I also see it as an attack on our culture as in totality. You know, when you look at the broader spectrum, at the way that this has happened, you know, even for the fishing industry, I've had many meetings with Save Our Beloved Geograph Bay, with the recreational fishing, as well as professional fishing. And it's the same. It's like, this is part of our culture. It's how we've developed as a nation. And again, the government is coming in and implementing policies, agendas, and legislation, all written behind closed doors by people that do not represent us, but are here to represent the puppeteers, as you said. And the thing is that we did not agree to this. We didn't consent to any of it. And just like the last 4 years, no one really gave informed consent. And this is how it's been, this little sly chipping away of our culture and our nation and who we are as people. And you're right, it has taken away a lot of confidence. I've heard out of many mouths of farmers that I hear, it's like, well, what else am I going to do? You know, we're being pushed to the wall. I keep telling them, and I will say this again and again and again, this is a message to all farmers: do not sell out to this ideology that's been shoved down your throat. I can tell you now, when it comes to what the changing pattern is here for health, well-being, and moving ahead with a culture, we are going backwards. We are going to go and take it back to the simple things, to wearing more wool and natural fibers on our body because it's healthier for us. Do not give up your merino sheep. Do not be throwing all of this industry out the window like the government is trying to force you to do. Push back. I cannot say enough. Farmers need to stand up and push back, because I'm sick of hearing it. It's like now we're pushed to having solar arrays and having wind farms on their farms, and that's going to be a great little passive income. And I say garbage to that. That means that you've believed everything that you've been told and you've given up your power. Exactly what you said, Wade. It's disempowered them.
Yeah, look, that's dead right, Martine. And it's like for many years, we've been in the battle to help save farmers and save our agricultural industry. I'm a third generation dairy farmer here in Northern Victoria. I mean, not dairy farming now, but at the end of the day, it is so. I like to say it's so weak, but we get so many of our farmers do say that, what am I going to do? Oh, they're putting the price down. They're putting the cost of commodities up. I'm going to have to milk more cows. I'm going to have to put in a few more paddocks of crop. I'm going to have to grow some more stock to try and cover this. And what they do is they continually corral our agricultural industry into a smaller and tighter paddock, which ends up is at the start of the race going into the abattoirs.
Yeah.
So, the Australian farmers need to need to start to understand what's going on, because we continually hear, look, agriculture's great in Australia, from all the leaders, all the media, whatever. Oh, look, and farming's looking terrific. Hang on a minute. It might be for the people who are left. There's a whole heap of them have been wiped out, destroyed, sent broke. They've committed suicide. They've had all the family breakdowns, marriage breakdowns, the whole deal. And so we've got, the likes of the National Farmers Federation, just for one. And I think a lot of our state-based farmer so-called representative organisations too, need to stop continually painting the glass half full and just deal with reality. And the reality is they are wiping us out hand over fist. And the agricultural industry, which is the most collectively powerful social and political industry in the country, is just bending over and getting smashed to pieces and bashed around the head and body, and is too weak and gutless to stand up and fight. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people say, oh, we had to do it. Yes, of course. But if you refuse to admit what the problem is in the first place, then continue to be wiped out. Now,
there's no way to remedy what the issue is there, if you can't admit what the problem is and what the root cause? So the only way to really remedy something is go down to what's caused this, how did they get here, and go back at it and just say either we rip this rotten tooth out, which is what this is. It's rotten to its core. It is. Sometimes I get so angry, Wade. I know that the last 4 or 5 years was a real test to our regional and remote communities and our farmers, where they were told that unless they participated in an experiment to get jabbed with some juice, that they won't even be able to sell their livestock. What on earth? Of all the people that are out there getting fresh air, they're really healthy types of people that are exercising, they eat pretty good, most of them that I know, and they're told that unless they partake in that, they weren't going to be able to sell their livestock. That was a test, and I told most of my family personally and others via word of mouth that do not participate in the experiment, because once you guys go down, that is the backbone of Australia that will fall. And this is where I say there's lots and lots of buyer's regret from all the farmers that I know that wish they'd never got it, because a lot of them are unwell now. And that, again, has weakened the industry, because now there are people that are unwell that don't have the energy, the inspiration to fight back. And this makes me really angry, because I have family members that are very, very sick because of this. Sometimes I feel like I'm going to lose my fashizzle. That's how I feel, Wade. I get so angry about it. To know that this effect has not been addressed still, it's still coming out, and to know that this is still all part of this. We know that this is part of what they wanted to roll out, and it's weakened this community because they were forced to the wall. They weren't even going to be able to conduct their businesses, and then this comes straight back off the back of that. Yeah. not planned at all.
So, and you used the term experimental substance or whatever it is that you said there a minute ago. And I say there is absolutely nothing experimental about it. It has nothing to do with trying to help you with your health. It has everything to do with destroying your health. And this is something that is perfected. It's if you, and you know, okay, I'm a farmer, but I also now have a lot to do with a huge number of doctors and medical professionals with regard to the stuff that they've had injected into them. And the evidence, the data, 100% conclusive is that this was a specifically modified and manufactured substance that is going to, in many cases, it's already killed people. And that's its single and only purpose. It was never, ever intended to help your health. It's intended to do the exact opposite. And, you know, I suppose one of the main things to say here at the minute is, while they're still even pushing for people to get more of these stupid-looking needles, they're bringing in the next wave of fraudulent diseases, which is specifically to make people go and get more of them. I mean, what the hell? You know, we talk to people all the time because this is one of the fields that we deal with, and you know, people are just dropping dead all over the place. You know, and we deal with a lot of people who have lost family and friends and relatives and so on, and many of them that I know personally have said, you know, their friend, family member, what have you, has said, I know since I got it now, I feel I'm dying, and you know, within sometimes months or weeks even, they're dead. So one of the main messages that we need to be putting out is how seriously dangerous that is, because that is where it is at, and they're bringing it back again. So therefore, as an industry, as a community, we need to be fighting back against that at all cost. And in particular, our farmers, you know, you mentioned before, if they didn't have it, they wouldn't be able to sell their stock. Well, I'm here to tell you now that one of the dot point issues that makes up the global big picture plan that I talk about is now farmers, if they're moving to change it so that if farmers want to be able to sell their produce, they're going to have to be able to prove what, through documentation and so on, what they're doing in their farming operation to get to net zero. Now, this is an impost that it's unachievable. If you're a farmer, you will never, ever be able to comply. You will never, ever be able to continually come up with the idiotic, stupid crap that they are wanting you to do to come up with the so-called net zero. And now they're starting to make it compulsory that some businesses and that compulsorily report as to what they're doing to get to net zero. And net zero is a net destruction of everything we've got here. So, you know, farmers are going to have that enormous extra burden put on top of them that they cannot comply with, and it will end up destroying them. It does not matter how rich you are going to go down unless we fix it.
You touched on this one, and this relates back to what you said earlier when Mr. Dutton came over and didn't invite those that were fighting the offshore wind turbines to his lovely little announcement. But we did gate crash like we do. You know us, Wild West and all. Yeah.
What have I got myself involved with here?
You know what you have, my friend.
And I love it.
Yeah, it's great. So we did go in and we invited ourselves and we asked those questions, and we said to Mr. Dutton and co, if you want our support, we want out of the climate change net zero agreement that you also supported, and we want out of GOA. And when people understand what that means, to roll that back, if they commit to that, then they're being serious, exactly as you said, because that's the one thing that's holding all of this together, is that they signed up to net zero and they're still moving ahead with that agenda. You can see that still in the plan, it's still in their wording. That is the one thing to question. Your local representatives, do you believe or do you support net zero? And if they say yes, say, sorry, you've lost my support. And you know why? Because exactly what Wade said, it's not attainable. Scientists are coming out left, right, and center and saying, look, we need to scrap that whole idea because it's unattainable. And the fact is that we need and require CO2 for life. It's what causes growth on the planet. That's why our plants grow. I mean, all farmers know that. It's basic stuff. It's basic science 101. So I'm saying here to all you farmers out there, whoever you're having your meetings with and your council and everyone else, you need to ask them to get out of net zero, because that is going to do you over, exactly as Wade said. Get out there and get mouthy.
Yeah, I mean, this is right. The plans now they're open for everybody to see. They're on the table. You know, I hear a lot of people talk about, you know, they're very good at business, and I'll just look at the farmers at the minute, let alone every other industry and businesses that are going around. But although the same thing applies, you know, I see a lot of awards being awarded to some farmers because they had the best this or the best that, or they're great at business, or they're whatever. And my opinion is, if you refuse to acknowledge the greatest threat to your business, the one that will wipe you out, then I don't think you're very good at business at all. So, I mean, you know, the politics, whether you like it or don't,
Totally.
The most important single element to your business, particularly farming, is politics. And if you refuse to get involved in that, or refuse to take any notice or any action or what have you, then you're done. It's over for you. You are not going to last much longer. That's the bottom line. And we've seen so many people now destroyed because they refuse to look at politics, and whoever's left is on borrowed time if they don't do something about it now. And that's what we're about doing.
Yeah, get off your bum. Stand up. Start speaking out. Start sending out emails, whatever you can do to start asking those hard questions, because without getting out of this World Economic Forum agenda, this climate change hysteria, and, you know, I have people contacting me all the time and saying things. It's like, oh, you know, I'm studying environmental science and there's so many things we're just not sold on at all. It's like, it's making me question, like, good, keep questioning. And that's the thing, is that we were, you know, pacified into thinking that the government represented us and were doing the best for us. And now we can see that they were only working for the corporate puppeteers and those that are connected back to banking as well, of course. And so here it is, we're right on the precipice of, especially in WA. So WA has a huge agricultural representation, and yet look what they did to the way that our electorate runs. So that now, you know that probably, Wade, that they changed that the whole voting throughout WA is rolled into one big pot. So it's not areas anymore. So it's absolutely insane. So what do you think is going to happen when people in the city go out to vote and they have no concept of what's going on in regional areas for farmers and primary industries? They have no concept of what's happening. I still have people that don't even know about the offshore wind turbines. I'm pretty out there. So the fact that they haven't heard me or someone else banging on that drum, I'm surprised at, but I still get it. And that tells us that we still have a very long way to go. As you said, to be dumbed down and told to not be political. When people say that to me, I don't want to get political. I'm like, then you're going to lose. Oh. You need to play your own game, and you need to know what you're up against and what this is all about, how this all ties in together. Because if you don't see the lay of the land, you don't know how to push back and fight.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, there's, and you know, we do talk a lot about the politics because that's what matters here. People have their, you got your airy-fairy pie in the sky, everything's all rosy and all that sort of crap. And then you've got reality. And that's where the politics is at. And I must say that, you know, we went to a summit a few months ago in Bendigo, and it was I think it was a bush summit or something like that, and we got talking to one of the people who backed it, and a very, very large company that does may or may not have started its origins in Western Australia, actually. A very, very big iron ore mining company, and, Australian, and bangs the drum for Australia. And I listened to this woman that owns it. She put up a video during this thing in Bendigo in North Central Victoria here, and I know that they ran a number of these meetings around Australia. I spoke to one of her people at that, and to say, well, listen, how about giving us a bit of a hand to actually save Australia? Because at the time I listened to this woman's video, and she sounded more Australian than whoever. You know what I mean? She sounded like she was a really great advocate for Australia and looking after it. And anyway, so I thought, rightio, we'll approach these people and have a bit of a yarn to see what sort of assistance that the likes of Billboard Battalion might get to give us a hand to actually, really fight for our country, because we've proven beyond any doubt our model works. We just need to get the backing and the funding to make it bigger, to expand it around Australia, and then we can have a massive big influence and a voice and so on. Anyway, I haven't heard anything back from them. Got a couple of contacts, tried it, spoke to the bloke who was there at Bendigo, but I'm starting to really become concerned that I'm wondering if this mining magnate woman is that big that, she's really connected to the WEF or the UN or the WHO. So, we're waiting on some correspondence back from her company. But, I just think we need to keep our eye open as to who's really actually trying to fight for our country, or who's just giving us the spin and the propaganda. And, they produce things in public that, PR companies make for them or whatever. And so I think there's a fair bit of deceit happening, and we need to be very, very smart about identifying and calling that out. But just to give you an idea, sorry, Martin, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think that more than anything, that the one thing that people are sick of is not full transparency and honesty. I think everyone's time for the absolute truth. Let's put all the cards out on the table. And I know myself, that's exactly where I'm at. I'm so sick of the games. I'm sick of the smoke and mirrors, people projecting to be one thing and they're not. I think that people are seeing through a lot of that. I know there's one over in WA, and that individual, don't even say their name because I'll know I'll end up in court for sure. But
no idea who you're talking about. No idea at all.
Let's just say a tree without any leaves. Anyway, so all I can say is that I shake my head because there is this perception that he's out there now saying that he's against that ideology, and yet he was in full support of all of that. And it's like, you can't backtrack like that when you know that you were fully invested in green ammonia and stuff, and had your own hubs going. And the thing is that you're right, it's who they align with and who they've made a promises to. So I think it's time to call people out on where there is deception and not there's on honesty and transparency, Wade, which is why we were saying to the Liberals, you've made promises that if you don't even try and keep, God knows over in the West we will have you. They know it too. That's why they avoid me like the plague.
Well, I can say that they don't like people that just stand up and tell the truth. They just shoot straight, and they're the real Aussies who just call out the lies and the deception. This is their bottom line, is deception, to the point where we've had, and I'm speaking from experience, we've had people over this side in the east who have been conservative politicians, Liberals and Nationals, who, with regard to the likes of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, said, they wouldn't support this and they wouldn't support that and they wouldn't support extra water being taken and all that. And I just run with me. I know a number of people won't know what I'm talking about, but just the dot points more or less. And then when they get into power, they do an exact backflip. They do the exact opposite. And then all they do is they come up with all the excuses and crap as to why they can't do it. And by that stage, it's 3 or 4 years down the track, and the damage has already been done, you know. So, and I just want to point out how this system works. Now, I've been in this game for a long, long time, and I've seen many politicians over many issues, and in particular farmers, you know, and this is how it works. An issue will come along, whether it's the dairy industry here, the water issue, the keep the sheep, whether it's the power lines, whether it's a renewable energy, doesn't matter what it is. This is the model they use. An issue will come up, and then all of a sudden, everybody will be jumping up and down. They'll all go crook about it. They'll go and have a couple of public meetings. They'll put a heap of stuff on social media. They'll raise some money. And the main thing is they'll go and see the politicians, and they'll come along and they'll say, well, we've invited this politician to this meeting, and they've said, you know, we're not going to support this, and we won't support that. And, you know, we support our hardworking farmers, and Labor's policies of this and all this other crap. And what happens is they'll pick a few of the community leaders, these politicians, and then they'll go and pat them on the head, and they'll seduce them. They'll tell them how great they are. They get them on side, and how we're going to fight for you farmers when we get into Parliament. And the thing is that the politicians have already signed up to the thing that they're supposedly fighting against, you know, 20 years beforehand. So therefore, the politicians suck in the people, generally in this, what I'm talking about, the farmers, they suck them in, because you get a few of the more leader kind of farmers, community leaders. They want to be mates with the politicians. They want the pats on the head, and they want to be spoken about by the politicians and taken out and give them a bit of a treat. So they buy them off, and then they start playing one against the other. So therefore, that's how it works, and that's how they take away the power of community and of farmers. That's the system they do. And I've seen it with issue after issue, time after time, after 30 years of this stuff. So the farmers, us, need to be a hell of a lot more smarter than to allow that to occur. And in so many cases, like I said, the National Farmers Federation, you see the people go through the ranks there, end up either politicians or some stinking bureaucrat job and working for the government. That's the payoff for selling out our agriculture. That's the payoff. So the farming population needs to get a hell of a lot smarter and actually pay this dangerous thing the respect it deserves, because it is so dangerous. Otherwise, there'll be nothing of us left.
Farmers need to get together, get organised, get educated, and work out what they want, instead of going and looking for permission from the politicians and trying to lobby. That was the one thing we said at Save Our Beloved Geograph Bay. We are not going to politicians and lobbying them. That's the game that's over. We were playing our own game. We went to all the stakeholders, gave them all the information, all the truth, and disclosed as much transparency as we could, which was hidden from everyone. And when we started to piece together all of the federal and the state plans, because that's the other thing, federal have their own agenda, and then the state comes in and they sort of superimpose over each other. And then you see it's a total stitch up, because you told one story from one part, and then this is slipped in here, and then, oh, wait a sec, we'll try and do that through local government. Yeah, well, I don't call them local government, I'll call them councils, because back in 1988, we had a referendum and said that no, we weren't going to recognise our local shires as government, and we didn't want them in our constitution. But here they are. Anyway, all I can say, Wade, is that I think we've got more conversations coming up, my friend. Can't wait till you and the crew are back in WA, because it's going to get spicy here leading up to March. That is for sure. Thank you, Wade, for joining me today on Martini's Eco Bites.
Any time at all.